Hey YouTube, it's Buddha Gem. I'm back in business. I'll give you guys an update. I need to thank a lot of new subscribers. But before I get into that, I've been itching to reply to Schizo Prori's video about the Gen 6. In it, he pleads, one of his latest videos, I'll probably post this as a response. He pleads for someone to show him the numbers that blacks are an oppressed minority in this country. I was a little surprised. I would think, Schizo, I'm going to give you those numbers because blacks in this country are an oppressed minority. Blacks represent about 13% of our population, maybe 12. But numbers alone don't necessarily make a minority. I mean, like, say Jews are numerically very small in this country, and yet I think one would be hard-pressed to consider them a minority due to their political clout, their economic prowess, their socioeconomic achievements. So numbers alone don't necessarily constitute a minority. For instance, women are numerically, about half the population, a little over half. And yet most people would consider them a minority, due in large part to their lack of political power, their overall socioeconomic status, things like that. Of course, there are women who have achieved quite a bit. Hillary Clinton may very well be our next president. But women as a whole still earn less than men for the same work, often face discrimination at the workplace, harassment. And so these are the things we look at when we speak about a minority and whether or not that minority is oppressed. And blacks certainly constitute an oppressed minority. For instance, let's just go over the incarceration rate of blacks and whites in this country. Pick a state, any state. Let's go to Louisiana. In Louisiana, there are 7 blacks incarcerated for every 1 white. Okay? In Washington, D.C., it's 34 blacks for every 1 white person. Remember now, whites, represent a majority in this country. So the fact that we're incarcerating more blacks, 34 blacks for every white guy, or 5. In Arizona, it's 5. Alabama, it's 5. It's 5 for every white person. Now, it should be said from the get-go that blacks and whites commit crimes at about the same rate, just like humans. It's not a racial thing. Blacks don't commit more crimes than whites. Latinos don't commit more crimes than Asians. Humans, Americans, commit crimes at about the same rate. But the justice system isn't blind to color. Your color, who you are in this country, what you have, what is a very important part of how the justice system treats you. And so being black is not a good thing in this country. The Leadership Conference on Civil Rights in 2000 released a 90-page report called Justice on Trial, Race Disparity in the American Criminal Justice System. And they found the color of a person's skin is a better indicator of how long a person's sentence will be, whether or not a person will be pulled over by the police, whether or not a person is given the death penalty, what kind of plea bargain a person is offered, or whether or not a juvenile is tried as an adult. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. But it's something we all need to know. I mean, just take race in the death penalty. Your race is a determining factor whether or not you get the death penalty. Think about that. A white man and a black man both commit some heinous murder. Right? The black person, the black man, is 8 times more likely to get the death penalty because of his race. 8 times. There's, of course, there's economic factors that play into this. They call it capital punishment because if you have no capital, you will get punished. 90+% of death row inmates could not afford an attorney. But race is a determining factor on who we kill. It's a determining factor on who gets arrested. It's we all have heard of the disproportionate punishments meted out for crack violations as opposed to cocaine. Crack comes from cocaine. And yet, when the white kid in the suburbs gets busted with his coke, he gets a slap on the wrist. The black kid in the inner city gets busted with crack, he's going away for 10 years. That's racial. That's racially motivated. That's a racially motivated justice system. Our justice system is not blind. Color, your political, views, who you are, what you're all about, all that plays a role in how the justice system treats you. And blacks are certainly an oppressed minority in this country. And let me just give you another thing here. The average child born today in the United States is expected to live approximately 78 years. A large portion of this increase is due to raise in infant mortality rates. However, life expectancy for black newborns is still 5 years less than life expectancy for white newborns. It's 73 years if you're black. It's 78 years and some change if you're white. And then when you look at infant mortality rates, your child, because it's black, has a greater chance of dying in during childbirth than a white child. That's not oppression. We live in a society that not only incarcerates, murders, and just demeans and dehumanizes black people, but it actually shortens their lifespan. As white people, this isn't about feeling guilty. I'm not the cause of this. But we have to educate ourselves so that when someone does pull out the race card, we don't just flippantly dismiss it. Oh, them blacks are always pulling the race card. Yeah, because it's real. Because their reality is different from ours. When they see a police officer, it's a scary feeling because they know how the police treat them. We just had an incident here in Brooklyn. A civil rights attorney, a guy who specialized in police brutality. He sees, first time in his career, him and his wife, they're both prominent civil rights attorneys. They see the police beating a young black youth that is handcuffed. So they go in to stop it. They're like, hey, you need to stop this. You know what the police do? They beat them. And they charge them with assault on the police officers. Guess what color they were? They're black. And the community's outraged right now, and we're fighting it, but that's the reality. When the police do not treat us all the same. If you think they do, you're mistaken. Look at the incarceration rates in your state. Look at the incarceration rates in your city. It's not that, when you see that 5 blacks are incarcerated for every white person, it's not because blacks are committing more crimes. It's because the police are enforcing the laws on the blacks. It is racism. Racism is inherent in the criminal justice system. It's undeniable. It's an indisputable fact. And the oppression of black people has continued unchecked. We've made progress. Civil rights movement has made progress, but we got a long way to go before we live in a colorblind society. So as white people, schizo, I'm asking you to look into this for yourself. The facts, the numbers, the studies, all this stuff is before you. Go to the Human Rights Watch. Go to Amnesty, any of the human rights organizations, and read about the racial disparity in our country. The ACLU, the information's out there. Blacks are an oppressed minority. in this country.